It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We got a lot of stuff to get to this hour. I want to talk first about the ballot initiatives. We're going to go through the different ballot initiatives that are going to be on your ballot when you go to vote this year. And so Conduit for Action's put together a great, really good, comprehensive review here. And hopefully this video will be useful to you as we go through this. So let's get started here, okay? So the first thing you need to know is that there are two, go to the next slide here. There are two types of ballot issues, okay? You have proposed constitutional amendments, amendments to the Arkansas Constitution. Then you're going to have initiated acts, which are, an amendment or new state statute, okay? Those are the two types. You can have them proposed by the General Assembly, okay? So the Arkansas General Assembly may refer up to 3 proposed constitutional amendments each legislative session. And this is, for us to vote on. The Arkansas General Assembly may refer statutes for the people to vote on in the next regular general election. The Attorney General, this is key, does not have to approve the ballot titles or popular names of the proposed amendments or statutes, okay? Then you can have citizen petition initiatives, which we've seen a lot of those recently. You have ballot question committees may secure signatures to place constitutional amendments or initiated acts. The number of signatures is based on the total number of votes cast in the previous election. For 2018, 67,887 valid signatures for initiated acts and 84,859 valid signatures for constitutional amendments. So, again, initiated acts would be new laws. Constitutional amendments would be, amendments to the Constitution. Pretty straightforward. Interesting difference here, though. The citizen petition initiatives, the Attorney General must review and approve the ballot titles and popular names for all citizen petition initiatives. But the Attorney General does not have to do that for the proposed amendments by the General Assembly. And that's sad because the people of Arkansas have been taken advantage of by our own elected officials. Of note would be convicted felon, going to do 18 years in prison, John Woods. All right, so here are the issues. You got issue 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Issue 1 is a cap on lawsuit damages, the bad tort reform bill. Issue 2 is voter ID. Issue 3 is strengthening term limits. Issue 4 is the casinos, and issue 5 is the minimum wage increase. Now, it's interesting to note, issue 1 is tied up in court right now. Issue 3 is tied up in court, and issue 4 is tied up in court, okay? So the caps on lawsuit damages in court, strengthening term limits is in court, and casinos is in court. So it's possible, who knows, that none, on these issues that, you may go vote for them, but they may not count those votes because they may get thrown off the ballot. Certainly something to think about. Let's start at the top of the list, right? Let's start with issue 1. Issue 1 is a terrible idea for a lot of reasons. Man, I saw some propaganda out there of people saying, why issue 1 is so good, and the Facebook comments were just brutal. I mean, brutal, saying this is a terrible idea. I thought that was really good. Public opinion polls are saying that issue 1 is not going to do too hot at the polls, but you still got to go, still got to vote against it. Issue 1 puts a cap on non-economic damages at $500,000. Non-economic damages, $500,000. So, I mean, if something happens to you and it's literally just your worst case scenario, $500,000 is all you're going to get for the rest of your life. It puts a cap on punitive damages set at greater of $500,000 or 3 times compensatory damages. Limits on contracts between attorneys and their clients, capping attorneys' fees to 1/3 of the net recovered in a civil lawsuit, which is ridiculous. This flies in the face of the right to contract. It flies in the face of, it's basically an income cap saying, Barack Obama said, I do think there's a point where you've made too much money. Okay? I mean, come on. This is America. Okay? It's still America for lawyers or attorneys, just like it's America for other people. Sky's the limit, okay? Profit's not a dirty word. That's one of the reasons. That may be because of my capitalist leanings. That may be the one part about this that I can't stand the most. And it's not that I'm not an attorney. It's not that I just think, look, it's a slippery slope. They come for attorneys. They're going to come for talk radio hosts at some point. And they're going to say, you're charging too much money for this ad. And I just, and everybody, you're charging too much money for this service. I think that, I think you got to stand up for the principle of letting people contract and make as much money as somebody is agreeing for them to make, whether that's 30%, 40%, 50%, 80%. If you're contracting, it's on you. All right. Then it gives the state legislature the power over court rules of procedure and evidence. This is a big no-no. I mean, this is a violation of the separation of powers. It gives future legislators power to adjust caps and or annul or amend rules from the Arkansas Supreme Court. Translation, it allows us to politicize the rulemaking of specific court cases, class action cases. It's a terrible idea. Now, before we move on from issue 1, I want to read you a statement here. Okay, this is really, really good. This is Conduit for Action. Conduit for Action, a conservative pro-business nonprofit, is in favor of tort reform. However, Conduit for Action officially opposes the proposed constitutional amendment known as Issue 1 that will be on the Arkansas ballot. Conduit advocates for the benefits of limited government, individual liberty, and economic freedom with an emphasis on small business, but believe Issue 1 is in direct contradiction with these principles. While frivolous lawsuits hurt small business, Issue 1 does nothing to address frivolous lawsuits. CFA supports loser-pay tort reform, but opposes Issue 1 as there is no loser-pay tort reform language included. To argue they're going to add it later is a Trojan horse. What Issue 1 does include are these special liability protections for nursing homes, hospitals, and other big corporations and other special interests. Issue 1 allows politicians to put a cap on the value of human life if someone is injured or killed due to the negligence of another. Issue 1 limits the cost of being negligent at the expense of the innocent. Hear me. Issue 1 limits the cost of being negligent at the expense of the innocent. That is wrong, Republicans who support this. Issue 1 is anti-free market. It puts government in charge of setting the price that attorneys and clients can agree are reasonable fees for an attorney's work. Issue 1 limits the ability of both clients and attorneys to have freedom to contract. Ultimately, this will limit the ability for injured people to find an attorney to take their case against these special interest groups, which is the goal of the supporters of the ballot issue. Issue 1 undermines the balance of powers of 3 co-equal branches of government. It would allow the legislature to take over the rulemaking authority of the judicial branch. Legislators would be allowed to write rules of evidence and procedure for courts. This is a terrible idea that would see the courts be corrupted with lobbyists and special interests telling the legislators what rules to write for the courtroom, even rules intended to benefit cases that may be then pending against lobbyists' clients. Hello, McFly. Think, McFly, think. Issue 1 does nothing to help small business or provide economic growth in Arkansas. It's simply writing special protections for special interests into the Arkansas Constitution. Conduit for Action is proud to join with other conservative groups like Family Council and pro-life leaders like Rose Mims of Arkansas Right to Life in opposing this measure. Issue 1 does not help Arkansans and will not help the Arkansas economy nor create jobs. Conduit for Action encourages all voters to vote no on Issue 1 this fall. This is, let me see here. Let's go to the next slide on this. So, who supports Issue 1? You have supporters of Issue 1, nursing homes and hospitals, the Trucking Association, Walmart and other corporations, the State Chamber of Commerce, insurance companies, the Poultry Federation. It says here, Americans for Prosperity. Okay, who opposes Issue 1? The Trial Lawyers Association, the Arkansas Bar Association, Family Council Action Committee, Conduit for Action, Rose Mims, officer with Arkansas Right to Life, and other pro-life advocates. Okay? Those are your groups. That's where it all falls down, really. And you could probably add some or, add some to both sides. But, I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about here. Just so you know who supports, who opposes. All right? Issue 1, I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly. It will not be the last time we cover it. Now, going down the ballot this November, you'll make your decision on issue 1, and then you're going to go to issue number 2. Issue number 2 is voter ID. It will require a valid photo ID in order to vote. It will empower the legislature to determine which types of ID that can be used. It will require the state to provide free ID to eligible voters. And you may cast a provisional ballot without a valid photo ID, which would be certified later after some sort of identification is produced. Now, this is really, really good. Now, there was an illegal immigrant. When I gave this presentation recently, there was an illegal immigrant question. I mean, like, okay, well, how? And that is where this is a big deal here. The legislature will be able to consider which form of ID is acceptable, right? So then it would go, let's say they say only a valid Arkansas ID. Okay, well, then you got to go to, okay, well, who are we giving these IDs to? What's the driver's license situation, how secure that is? You know what I mean? And you can tweak stuff here and there. I don't know, maybe a concealed carry license would be, also valid. Some sort of Arkansas ID to vote in Arkansas elections would certainly be reasonable. But you want to make sure that only citizens are allowed to get, the ID that you would then present. So that would fall on the legislature to make good policy to ensure that only citizens of Arkansas and this country are allowed to vote. And that's obviously where that authority should be, by the way. So it's not rocket science. Voter ID is a good thing. It protects the integrity of our elections. I certainly support voter ID, and that is issue 2. So after you vote on issue 2 for or against, you'll then move down to issue 3, which is a little bit more controversial, to say the least. Issue 3, strengthening of term limits. This would shorten term limits for Arkansas state legislators to a 10-year max. House would be 3 2-year terms. The Senate would be 2 4-year terms. And any future changes to the term limits shall not be made by the legislature, only by the people in an initiated, signature gathering effort, if you will. A little bit of background here. Amendment 73 of 1994 was 3 2-year terms in the House and 2 4-year terms in the Senate. Then you have the Trojan Horse Amendment 94 of 2014, 10 years later. Convicted felon John Woods and the rest of the legislature duped the people. Now, not all of them, but you know what I'm saying, collectively. And then they increased it to 16 years in the legislature, which said that partial terms and 2-year terms in the Senate wouldn't count. And because of that, it was possible under the 16-year term limit in the legislature under the John Woods-initiated fraud that you could serve a potential, if you hit it right, drew the straws right, 22 years. A lot of people don't know that. Now I think the reverse would be true. If the 2018 ballot issue 3 passes, you're going to have 10 years in the legislature, max of 3 terms in the House, max of 2 4-year terms in the Senate. Partial terms of less than 1 year do not count. Okay. So anyway, it's controversial. Obviously, there's a lot of legislators. Listen, the fact is there's a ton of politicians that don't want this. Now, we could talk about that. I would say I'm not surprised. But at the same time, there are politicians who can make reasoned arguments, and I have said this as to why it's not a good thing, right? And I respect them. I've had them on the show. I'm going to have them on the show again, and we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be fine, and we're going to agree to disagree. I think 10 years is a good idea because I'm tired of what's going on, and I think a decade's long enough. That's just my opinion. And other people are going, to we're going to make the decision. The people are going to vote if now this is tied up in court. There's a chance that this thing gets thrown out. There's a chance. And I actually have been told by people that I trust there's a ever-increasing chance that Issue 3 is going to get thrown out. So, you'll hear a big exhale and sigh of relief from the Marble Palace if that happens, let me tell you. And that's just because there's people who are going to have to go home. There's people that if this passes, they're already over the 10 years and they'll get to serve out the remainder of but they won't be able to run again. Okay, so after you make your decision on Issue 3, then you're going to go down to Issue number 4. Issue number 4, we're going to power through here. Issue number 4 would be casinos. This is also tied up in court, but it would add 2 new casinos in Arkansas, Pope County near Russellville, and in Jefferson County near Pine Bluff. It would allow expanded gambling at Oaklawn and Hot Springs and Southland in West Memphis. It would tax casino proceeds as follows: a 13% tax on the first $150 million, a 20% tax on receipts above $150 million, and it would be distributed as follows: 55% would go to state general revenue, 17.5% would go to Racing Commission for live horse and greyhound racing purses, 8% to counties in which the casino is located, and 19.5% to the city/town in which the casino is located. If it's not located in a town, then it would go to the county. Conduit for Action opposes this. I think it's ridiculous because, you're going to put casinos into our Constitution. It's a very strange thing to me. And of course, I was reading the article because I did get this question at the presentation. What's the process going to be like? Well, it's going to be really bad. There's going to be bidding. You have I think the Cherokee Nation and other Native American tribes that are going to bid on whether or not they get to put the casino in Jefferson or Pope County. Folks, can you imagine? We've seen how corrupt the medical marijuana situation has been. Can you imagine how bad this would be? Okay, so after you make your decision on Issue 4, assuming it doesn't get thrown out either, you'll go down to Issue number 5. Issue 5 is an increase in the minimum wage. This is a terrible idea for a ton of reasons. It would increase the Arkansas minimum wage up to $11 per hour by 2021. It would go like this. In January 2019, it'd go to $9.25 an hour. January 2020, go to $10 an hour. And January 2021 would go to $11 an hour. The current minimum wage in Arkansas is $8.50 per hour. The highest state minimum wage currently is $11.50 in the state of Washington. This is a terrible idea. This is going to hurt the very people it claims to help. And there's a lot of people that I would encourage you to go educate as to why you need to vote against this minimum wage increase. It also is going to hurt small business. It's going to make jobs scarce. It doesn't mean that if you're not making minimum wage now, like say you're making above minimum wage, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a raise if everybody else gets a raise. It actually means you're going to be valued less. It means that prices are going to slowly go up. It's not good for workers. It's not good for this concept of trying to make yourself more valuable to get more elite skills than the next guy. Yeah, it's not good for the economy. No more cars have been sold or homes have been built from December 2018 to January 2019. They're just declaring that we have more prosperity when in fact you don't. It doesn't make any sense. Not to mention the government wants minimum wage increases because now that means they tax you more. They get more money. They're taxing you the same, but now you're making $11 instead of $8. They get more money out of that. That's why the government wants it, because it feeds the pig, if you will. Those are your issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Refer to this video again if you want to know more. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.